Hi, I'm Benjamin Payne. At the K-12 Education Office at Hillsdale College, we support school founding groups and their efforts to start classical schools across the country. Finding the right leader is one of the first and most important steps to building a successful school. While we do consider experience in education, we seek candidates who exhibit unwavering personal integrity, honesty, courage, and servant-hearted leadership. Perhaps that's you. If you're looking to engage in fulfilling, impactful, and challenging work protecting our nation's future and building up the next generation of virtuous citizens, we'd love to hear from you. I'm looking for strong school leaders right now. Learn more about how you can make a difference at hillsdale.edu/leader. hillsdale.edu/LEADER. That's hillsdale.edu/leader.
Welcome to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, bringing you insight into classical education and its unique emphasis on human virtue and moral character, responsible citizenship, content-rich curricula, and teacher-led classrooms. Now your host, Scot Bertram.
Thanks for listening. The Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast is part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you get your audio. You also can find more information on topics and ideas discussed on this show at our website, k12.hillsdale.edu. We're joined by Josh Andrew. He's headmaster at Atlanta Classical Academy in Atlanta, Georgia. Josh, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Welcoming you back to the program to talk a bit about something that you've launched at Atlanta Classical Academy. This is the second year you've done what's called a February Freeze initiative. So tell us what that's about and how it's working out at Atlanta Classical.
Sure. So context is helpful here. A couple of years ago, we had a speaker come in and address our parents about some of the dangers of technology and students sort of wasting away hours upon hours on social media platforms, video games, whatever it might be. A sort of depressing evening, and we get to the end of the talk, and a parent stands up during the Q&A and makes this sort of desperate appeal to all the other parents in the room. Like, let's just sign a contract right now. Let's all agree we're going to keep our kids off this. And it was met with, great applause, but then the thing just sort of fizzled out. And so a member of our student services team at the time, Rachel Boyd, said, let's launch this initiative where we challenge our students to stay off all social platforms for the month of February. And this thing then sort of evolved into a series of challenges where social media is the baseline. And then we said, let's limit tech to an hour or less per day and then turn off all screens after 8 p.m. And so we call it the February Freeze Initiative. Students in grades 6 through 12 are sort of welcome to compete in it. We run it through our house system in the middle school groups as a way of sort of creating some competition and having some fun. But it's really gained traction as faculty and parents and even alumni have gotten involved. And it's become this thing that we all anticipate over the course of the school year, knowing we're going to be free from our devices in February. I legitimately found myself anticipating it all of first semester. Like, I just need February. I need February to be here so I'll have cause to get off my phone.
ACA is already a technology-free school, right?
That's right.
So why is it important to make this low technology commitment at home as well, at least for a month?
Yeah, 1 month. We can't go more than this. Yeah, so we founded the school in 2014, and it's been phone free from the outset, and that has manifold benefits that I think schools that are part of the K-12 initiative broadly have experienced. But we know that students are spending potentially massive amounts of time on their devices at home. And as a school, we talk a lot about students' attention, right? What you pay attention to is ultimately forming what you are. Your attention is most fully your own. And so we respond to that by agonizing over the curriculum that kids are interacting with from 8 to 3. But that question persists from 4 to midnight or whenever they go to sleep. What are you paying attention to? What are you giving your mind to? What is shaping your heart and your affections? And when you realize that kids are giving hours and hours of their time to TikTok or Snapchat or Instagram, whatever the platform might be, and then just ask the very simple question, question, do we like how this is forming you? The answer almost universally is no. And so we thought we need to actually push past the hours of the school day and invite students to reconsider their habits at home. And this, of course, has academic results, right? There's many studies that have been done that show that literally the proximity of your phone to you when you are studying will have a direct effect on your cognitive capacity, right? Fluid intelligence and working memory. That like having your phone on your desk has like a certain effect, but like as your phone gets farther and farther away from you, functionally your grades get better, right? So put your phone out of your room when you're studying. So there are academic benefits, but there are also just profound social benefits as we kind of allow students to engage with each other as human beings instead of having every conversation mediated through the platform of Snapchat or whatever their chosen social might be.
This is the second year that Atlanta Classical Academy has taken part in a February freeze.
Yes.
Take us through, not so much the results, because we'll talk about that in a bit, from a setup and execution standpoint, how that went year one, how you got it rolling, and what, if any, changes you made for year two.
Sure. So we launched the thing by bringing in a speaker at the end of January from this group called Social Awakening, this guy by the name of Max Stossel, who worked in Silicon Valley with a number of social platforms, and then was part of this group that made a documentary for Netflix. I think it was called The Social Dilemma. And he has this really striking way of making students feel like they are insiders in the conversation about tech use, right? For a long time, when we talked to kids about technology, we just sort of wagged our fingers at them and then did a bunch of fear mongering. And they were like, we don't care, we're brave, we're going to keep using these platforms. And what we realized was the most effective way to actually engage students in this conversation is to say, you all are being manipulated, right? All of these platforms are they know something about human psychology and they're literally taking advantage of you. And so we're going to bring you kind of behind the curtain and make you insiders in this conversation. So relevant only because it was this talk that sort of launched things. And after he gave this address to the students, we then presented this challenge. And originally the challenge was going to be sort of exclusively for grades 6 through 8, where we run our house system. And as students opted into different levels of the initiative, so staying off of all socials, again, limiting tech use to an hour or less a day, and then staying off of screens from 8 p.m. and beyond, you could earn points for your house, right? We have 4 houses like many schools in the initiative do. And so every week, kids would report on how much time they were spending on each of these platforms. And we had buy-in from parents who were sort of supporting us and giving us input on how much their kids were using their devices at home. But we literally just tracked it week after week. And the initial response was a little bit of suspicion, a little bit of eye rolling from the students. But we had, I would say, modest success in that first year.
I'm just curious, and you won't see this at school because it's a technology-free school.
Yeah.
What's your understanding about when your students are perhaps beginning to interact with cell phones and why perhaps there is a desire to have those phones in the house with them?
Well, a slight correction is appropriate here. We're not totally tech-free, right? So
low technology.
Yeah, low tech. I think that there's this sense that everything that is happening online. And so to be apart from that, to be the one without a phone, to be the one who is not on socials, is to be missing out on these core conversations and all of this activity. Jonathan Haidt wrote about this when he discussed how getting your kid away from his or her phone might not actually have the mental health benefits that you want because they're going to feel left out. And so what's essential is that this is actually something that we do as a community. And this was, again, part of the inspiration for the February Freeze initiative. Let's find a way for an entire grade, for an entire group of friends to make this decision collectively. So it's just sort of a collective action problem that we solve through this little initiative. And then they have to explore new ways of interacting with each other. They actually have to go over to each other's homes and sit and look each other in the eye. We have all of these sort of positive recommendations about what they do with their time now that suddenly hours of their day have been freed up from their phones. But yeah, to the core question, again, I think there's just this sense that you are going to miss out on everything that's happening in your world if you are apart from your phone. So there's this kind of desperation to be included.
Talking with Josh Andrew, headmaster at Atlanta Classical Academy, about their February Freeze initiative. You've mentioned parents a couple of times, and what students do at home is a little bit of an honor system there because the parents are the ones who are monitoring and they're going to report back to what's happening at home. How do you get that buy-in from parents? And do you hear from them about the balance they have to strike? Because parents do need technology at times, whether it be for work purposes or whatever it might be. There's a adult need for those kinds of devices and that kind of communication. How do they balance that with what they're telling their students throughout the month, telling their sons and daughters throughout the month? Yeah.
It's so essential that the adults in the room set the example. You can't say to your kid that he needs to get off her phone and then spend all of dinner texting or sending work emails. You can't say you all need to sort of be present in family conversations, and then for the entirety of family movie night, you are doing work, right? You're being productive, but you are distant, right? You are removed by the device that you're holding in your hand. So we are narrating to our parents that they have to be the ones to establish rules, expectations that they themselves abide and then hold their families accountable to. A small step toward this on the school side is that the administration for the month of February actually publishes its screen time. So every week in our newsletter, I'm just taking a screenshot of exactly how much time I'm spending on my phone and where that time is being spent. And all the kids get to see it. And it's a subject of much conversation over the month of February, where Mr. Andrew is spending his days. But we think it's critical that the parents are the ones who are, creating the rules, the structures in their home, in order for their kids to be able to do this successfully.
How have your staff, your students, your families responded, and perhaps even now that you're in year 2, graduates who have made their way to college? What are you hearing from them about the program and perhaps what benefits they saw from taking part in it?
Yeah. Just the other day, we heard from an alumnus who's at Ole Miss to say, hey, it's almost February. Can't wait for this February Freeze initiative. And to think that a senior in high school who has now left us and moved on still has this initiative sort of ringing in his mind and is planning his life around it was really hopeful to us. I think that somewhere in the neighborhood of like 75% of our middle school students opted into all 3 challenges this year. So last year there was just, there was a little bit of eye rolling. There was a little bit of suspicion. But I think that you can't argue with the experience of feeling freed from your device. Mm-hmm. And when that is coupled with the fact that that your friends are making a similar decision, suddenly it's possible. And we know the kind of clarity that we all experience when we take like a real break from our phones. And so it's not an initiative that has required us to kind of drag kids along. I think once they've actually committed to it, they have seen the benefits. And, over the course of the month, we are sort of inviting parents to share stories and little anecdotes about what their kids are doing at home, sort of, to fill in the time that they have now from their phones. And that's always delightful. One final anecdote here is we did a survey at the beginning of last year when we first launched this initiative and did it again this winter. And one of the questions we ask is, what's the value of your phone? Mm-hmm. Rate for us on a scale of 1 to 10 how important socials are. And universally, the number was like 2 or 3. So all these kids are saying, we hate these things. Like, we know that they're not bringing us value. And we know that objectively, but we can't act on it. Mm-hmm. And so we have just created a platform where they can and where the decision is much easier as their friends are making a similar one.
What would you describe as the tangible benefits that you've seen at the school as a result of the February Freeze? Yeah.
Probably a question that our assistant principal, who's responsible for discipline, should respond to, because as every dean of students or culture, whatever we call them, knows, group chats is where it all goes wrong, right? It's when kids get home and start speaking poorly about each other. So that's one practical benefit, right? Mm-hmm. Kids just being kinder to each other as a consequence of not having access to devices that can allow them to communicate early in the morning and very late at night. So that's a benefit. I think too, just students being more present, you're going to find that students are better rested. We are really pushing for students to use physical alarm clocks and to leave their phones on the dinner table or on an island where they're all charging together, right? Where the whole family says we're committing to not bringing our phones into our rooms. So I think you're going to see very practical things like kids who are better rested, who are more attentive, who are capable of sustaining attention, and then who are kinder to each each other. And of course, it's hard to measure all of this within a 30-day span, but the stories have been valuable. We just invite parents again over the course of the month to share little anecdotes about things you saw happening at home that were surprising, and you connect to kids getting off their devices.
I know you've only had 1 year in the books, but what happens in March? And or what do you expect
we go right
to happen
back
in March? I mean,
no, I'm kidding. It's a challenge. That first day in March is so interesting because, even I, the school leader, know, well, I'm no longer being monitored so carefully. And so the memory sort of lingers with you, and then it runs the risk of fading. I think it's like people that talk about building habits know that it's important to be realistic about what you can actually accomplish, right? And so having a year-long initiative, for example, is probably way too ambitious. And so we say, we're going to do this for 30 days. And we're
28 days.
28
right?
days. You're right.
The shortest month of the year.
We picked the shortest month. That's right. But freeze. It's not that cold in Atlanta for very long. So February worked. I think this was part of us just being practical about how long we could actually accomplish this for. And the hope is that this would stick with you and slowly begin to kind of reshape your habits as you move through the rest of your year. And, speaking to my own personal experience of it, it was on my mind. Whether or not it was directly changing my habits is another thing. But for the rest of the year, that experience of genuinely the freedom that I felt during that month, a new level of attention and focus was just in the back of my mind as something that was available. Should I start making some different choices? And I'm interested to see where we might go as a school to kind of create additional structures throughout the rest of the year to encourage similar habits. But we've been sort of intentionally modest up to this point, knowing that, being too aggressive, trying to do it for the entire school year might have a way of sabotaging the plan.
And one of the key reasons you hear students do use phones and social, they don't want to miss out.
Of course.
Stuff's happening.
Yes.
And so there must be relief that they know that their friends and older students and younger students are all taking part in the same effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have to be creative. You have to think of new ways to get in touch with each other, which of course we all had done for a very long time before phones became commonplace among small children. But yeah, there is a kind of palpable relief in knowing there aren't conversations going on that you're not privy to. And so I think it's essential that it's a thing that we do together.
What do you recommend for parents, teachers, or even school leaders out there who might want to start a similar initiative?
Yeah, I think connecting it to something like the house system is a wonderful way of just making it stick, giving it an element of competition. I think that was essential to actually developing some traction. And then when students watched this happening, they just sort of got excited, and we've seen the thing just gain greater traction the second year. In the upper school, or in the high school rather, grades 9 through 12, where we don't have the house system, it has been more the responsibility of teachers and our faculty advisors sort of just staying in dialogue with students to encourage them toward this for its own sake. I think, again, I mentioned this earlier, what has made our line of argument compelling is that we haven't been wagging our fingers at them. We haven't done the fear mongering that we had done in years prior. Again, it's look at how you're being taken advantage of, right? Look at how, something like variable rewards, right? This is how slot machines work. You pull the thing, it rolls, and then maybe you get something or maybe you don't. But for the hope that you get that little hit, you pull again and again. Your social media, feed designed with the exact same technology in mind. Even email, right? Think about being on your phone and you pull email. So you move your thumb down, your email loads, and then it feeds you. Oh, did I get something? Did I get an invitation? Do I have a personal message, or is it all just junk? So what we say to our upper school students is like, open your eyes to the ways that people are manipulating you and make a choice that to be in your best interest. So for our high school students, it's more sort of accomplished through conversation and through reason than it is through kind of a silly competition, but it's sticking, right? We're having probably double the participation in the high school than we did last year.
Josh Andrew is headmaster at Atlanta Classical Academy in Atlanta, Georgia, and taking part for the next couple of weeks in the February Freeze for the second straight year. Josh, thanks so much for joining us here on the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Scot Bertram. We invite you to like us on Facebook. Search for Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education. You also can follow us on Instagram at Hillsdale_K12. That's Hillsdale_K12 on Instagram. Thank you for listening to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you get your audio.